Oh, and I got to ask you, as someone who you have a career as a self-directed artist, uh, as well as a sideman, is there a hard wall between the two, or are you able to leverage opportunities for yourself as a solo artist through the musicians that you work with?
Yeah, for sure. Whether it's co-writing with the artists and getting tracks on a release, or uh, being an opening act, having your own band open for an act that you're working with, that there's definitely, I think, organic opportunities that come up. Listening to this whole conversation is funny because, I do play both sides, and that's something that I have to think about a lot, because I'm actively hiring sidemen to kind of join me on my own endeavors while being hired to do the same thing with other people. So I think that it gives me a lot of perspective with the way that I treat the people that I bring into my own projects, because I understand like the lifestyle, and just can speak the language in a way that I think might be lost on people who are kind of just exclusively used to just hiring out musicians. So, it's interesting listening to everybody's points of view, because there's so much subtleties to it, and just listening about how to keep gigs and not lose gigs, and sometimes how to lose a gig maybe is what your goal is. I mean, there's certainly plenty of people I can think of who, whether they said it or not, through their behavior, they demonstrated that they did not want to be a part of a project anymore. And that was just sort of their way of making the not getting asked back part more organic too. But yeah, it's interesting. You get a really clear idea of the value, what people should expect and to be paid, and what people deserve to be paid, and the type of conditions that people should be expected to do this job under. When you do both sides of it, you definitely, at least in my experience, have a high appreciation for how hard of a job it is, and B, how hard it is to run your own business too.
So, coming from that perspective of seeing both sides, are, are there artists that you've worked with who perhaps have had a reputation for going through musicians fairly quickly just because they don't know how to treat the people they work with? And then how do you, in a situation like that, is there a way to make it a situation that is doable for it? And name
Yeah, I
names.
mean, there's all the spectrum is vast. There's artists that run through players. There's players that run through artists. Usually, it goes along with the luxury of either of being really talented, or very successful. Um, you know, it, I equate it. I have lots of friends, as we all do, that do other jobs, and the same grievances you can see everywhere. It's hard to work in close proximity to other people that you're also traveling with 7 days a week, sleeping literally on top of each other in a tour bus, or sharing beds in a hotel. It doesn't really matter. It's a tough job. So I think, even though it's very it's a stereotype to be a moody musician on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's tough to go out there and have your personality on display every day, every night, and be in close quarters like that. So, there's definitely artists that run through players, and I'm assuming that most of us have found ourselves in that situation, and you either make the most of it, or you do it for as long as you want to, or you say, what, like, I can tell this seems like experience I've had before. I'm just going to bow out of this one. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't know until you're a month and a half into a 3-month commitment.
Gerardo, I mean, perhaps it's not sort of change topics a little bit. It's perhaps not obvious that you don't need a college degree to be a musician, but it should be. But is there anything education-wise that either has been crucial for you as a full-time musician and or was crucial in getting you to the point where you could be a full-time musician?
I would say the answer to that is no. I mean, I think that there's benefits. I mean, I did go to school for music and all that, but I mean, if anything, the only thing that I learned that's applicable in this context is just being prepared and always making sure that you're not, you know, letting the people that depend on you down. Right. And so the dependability, I think, is just such a key factor in being successful in this role. And really, even if you're not an absolute genius musician, as long as you're very reliable and you do your job well, you know, people are going to keep calling you back. So yeah, I don't think the professional musician thing is very relevant these days, in my opinion.
Everybody drop out.
I could be wrong, but that's just my opinion.
Every mom watching this video is just freaking out right now. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, Dan, is there a difference in the way that you prepare for studio recording versus going out on tour? And does that change, I guess, depending on the different acts that you've worked with over the years?
It's pretty similar. It's a matter of just literally being prepared and having the knowledge under your fingertips. But I think that there's a much bigger thing in preparing yourself for the tour situation, because there's a lot more dealing with an onslaught of different personalities. And I think that's where having the ability to learn about networking by just doing it, and then learning how to kind of like deal and cope with the different types of personalities. Sometimes even, and this is going to sound maybe negative, but like learning how to manipulate personalities into the way that you might need some things to happen. Like, hey, our drummer never gets his drums into the trailer. Like, what can we do to make that happen today? Like, that's not bad manipulation. Those drums need to get in the freaking trailer, right? So I think it's a matter of like just getting creative and finding ways to connect with people that make them want to keep you around is really what it's about. And I don't really know the answer with that. I actually like I've asked myself often, like having the opportunity to be in another band that's doing cool things like Ice Nine. I wonder, why was I presented the opportunity? Like I ask myself these podcast questions right now. You know what I'm saying? And the thing that I typically come up with is really just like the commitment to my craft, my commitment to like doing things as good as I possibly can, my commitment to being accessible to people. I think that was a really big part of why I was contacted in the first place, just because like, I think a lot of people in Ice Nine, the individual members create their own brands to a certain degree. And I had built out my own to a certain degree before I was offered the spot. And I think that goes hand in hand with making you valuable in a band that needs those types of components filled, you know?
Absolutely. Mike, not specifically necessarily for Ice Nine Kills, but for all the artists that you've worked with over the years, you know, the line is that you should dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. How important is the look, whether it be being somebody who looks healthy or doesn't, or isn't as good looking as the singer, that sort of thing, or having like the way that somebody dresses, so on and so forth. How important is that?
I mean, it's a good question. I think most of the people that are ready to fill that type of role that we're looking for, sort of, it's already inherent in them. But yeah, I think in many of the, the guy that we got to fill in actually brought a whole new flair that I think if we had been looking at just his looks, it wouldn't have worked on paper. That said, his ability to play, his ability to fit in with everybody, his ability to do all the things these guys are talking about, and gave him the that's what gave him the confidence to kind of stand out on his own anyways. And you know, it was a little bit of a transition, but once, you know, the fans got used to him being, you know, on stage, and even though he looked a little bit different than the old guy in terms of the way he dressed and presented himself, they actually came to like that a little bit more.
Got it.
So I gotta jump in on this topic because it's one of my favorite things to talk about in the music industry. Because things I experienced personally, I almost got kicked out of a band for being too tall, which is hilarious. And I remember going on an audition for a band that was like very like gothy and, you know, leather and makeup. And I was trying to get a gig, and then, you know, and it kind of, I had this revelation that, you know, my playing probably has almost nothing to do with why or not I'm going to get this gig. Thank God I didn't get this gig, by the way. But it's this thing that, you know, and that was on my mind like a lot when I moved to LA. It was like, you know, I'm at a certain age, but you kind of, if you can look younger and present yourself a certain way, it really opens you up to a lot of opportunities. And it's crazy how many players like that are, you know, mind-blowing players, but they just don't have that look that when a big spot opens up, like they're not even going to look at this person because they don't have the vibe. And it's interesting how many, especially like in the metal world, which is very curmudgeonly and kind of conservative in certain ways, that they kind of they take it personally and they get mad at it. And it's like, nah, man, it's like, you know, if you want a job at Hooters, you kind of got to come with the
fair point.
with the proper accoutrement.
I think Doc is also underestimating his personality and his ability to fit in, right? But great points.